Hello everybody, and thank you for attending this webinar, the first in a series of global conversations hosted by Xtrax. Today we're joined by some great speakers from South Korea, Hong Kong and Taiwan, who have kindly agreed to share how the outdoor arts sector is responding to the global pandemic in their countries, and their thoughts on how we move forward with international collaborations in a post-COVID world. My name is Hannah Hartley, and I lead on Relations in Asia for Xtrax. Xtrax is a UK-based development agency for the outdoor arts sector, and this weekend we were due to run our international showcase event in partnership with Stockton International Riverside Festival, one of the world's oldest and best international outdoor art festivals. In light of the COVID-19 pandemic and the cancellation of many festivals in the UK this year, we have moved the event online. You'll be able to find more information about this showcase, Xtrax and Stockton International Riverside Festival by clicking on the links in the YouTube description below. We received more than 180 registrations for today's showcase, and it's great to see that so many of you are watching right now. Before we proceed with the session, I just want to run through a few practicalities. Firstly, the session will run for 1 hour and 30 minutes, so that will be until 12:30 if you are in the UK and until 1:30 Central European Time. I must also thank our East Asian delegates who are taking time out of their Friday evenings to join us. Please introduce yourself using the chat function on YouTube to say hello, who you are and where you're from, so that other participants can see who is present. For access purposes and also acknowledging that English is not the first language for many of our listeners today, we've enabled captioning for both webinars. To activate your caption, simply click on the settings button on the screen, then subtitles, then English. If you would like to ask the panelists any questions, please do so using the chat function. We've allowed time at the end of this discussion for questions, and I will be monitoring the chat to make sure we include as many as we can. We're also recording the webinars today and will make these available online following the showcase. Please feel free to comment, post and tweet about this event using the hashtag #XtraxShowcase and #SurfAtHome. And make sure to follow Surf and Xtrax on social media, as we will be sharing follow-up resources and content. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started with this morning's session. So, due to the current challenges facing international collaboration, Xtrax is hosting this series of online global conversations to support international colleagues to continue conversations and facilitate information sharing across borders, sparking a debate about the future of the outdoor sector. The speakers are going to be asked to give a brief overview of the current responses to COVID-19 in their country and to respond to a series of questions about how to maintain international connections in these challenging times. This first Global Conversations event includes several representatives from East Asia. Between 2020 to 2022, we wish to build on existing relationships we have developed in Asia, creating new partnerships and facilitating exchange between East Asian countries and the UK in the field of outdoor art, street theatre and performance. This activity is part of the Platform for UK project for international collaboration in outdoor arts. This is supported by Arts Council and delivered by Xtrax. Our Platform for UK project promotes the work of UK outdoor artists internationally, creating new markets for UK work and developing strong international partnerships. Our international showcase events for professionals in the sector are one of the ways in which we aim to do this. If you're interested to find out more about this work, please contact our team following the session. I will now hand over to our chair for today, Michelle Rocha. Michelle is a highly experienced creative producer currently overseeing international touring at Manchester International Festival. Manchester International Festival is a biennial arts festival of new work and special events, staged at unusual venues across Greater Manchester, from theatres, galleries and concert halls to railway depots, churches and car parks. Michelle was previously the producer for the music and outdoor programmes at the West Kowloon Cultural District in Hong Kong. Over to you, Michelle.
Thank you very much, Hannah. For our audiences, the panelists and myself will not be looking at the YouTube live comments. So Hannah and her team will be monitoring it for us, and they'll be sending us the questions and conversations where necessary. There will be a Q&A at the end of the session, so do keep your questions coming and we'll get to them at the end of it. So thank you very much for having us here. It is brilliant sunshine outside of Manchester for a change, but also for a change, we are on a new wave of lockdown in Manchester, and that is why we're holding everything online right now. And it's great because even though it's online, we can still have amazing panelists coming to us on this program. So first we have Jin Lim from South Korea, and then we have Dan Yuanqing and his translator Joey from Taiwan. Last but not least, we have Alison Friedman from Hong Kong. Hong Kong is now having a third wave of COVID-19 infection, so it's quite worrying. Here in the UK, we are slowly seeing an easing of the lockdown. Theatres are in a phased opening and outdoor performances are allowed. Of course, it's quite different in different regions. We know that in August, happily, GDIF, which is the Greenwich and Docklands International Festival, will still open, so that's one thing to look forward to. We also see that traditionally within walled theatres are now experimenting with more outdoor performances during the COVID-19 crisis. The government is also encouraging people to repopulate the outdoors, and outdoor arts play a very important role in this. I came from Hong Kong. I've only moved to Manchester in November, so a big part of me is still very Hong Kong. And in Hong Kong, we call crisis ngai gay, which means danger and opportunity. So that's a very Hong Kong philosophy of understanding where there's danger, there's opportunity, and it might open up to new things that can happen. So for the first question, I want to ask about how the different territories are facing this danger, how the outdoor sector in your territories are affected by this current situation in terms of audiences, are performances allowed? More importantly, what do you think your future artistic programming might change following the pandemic? Can I start with Alison?
Thank you, Michelle. We miss you here in Hong Kong. I'm Allison. I'm the Artistic Director of Performing Arts for West Kowloon Cultural District here in Hong Kong. We're one of the largest arts and cultural developments in the world, building major performing arts centers, museums, and we have huge outdoor park space right on Victoria Harbour. And that park space has been constantly utilized throughout these last few months of COVID-19. We have found that even during the more strict lockdowns, people were still going outdoors, still finding ways to, in a city as congested as Hong Kong, having these big outdoor park space is a real oasis and a real opportunity. As Michelle mentioned, we're now, as of last week or last 2 weeks, in this third wave of shutdown, which was a bit surprising because actually we thought we were on a linear trajectory to opening the theaters again. We had already planned a whole series of open house activities with the idea of getting customers more comfortable, having that confidence to come back indoors and to utilize our huge open outdoor art park space to do pop-ups and outdoor events. Even though people were gathering naturally to be outdoors and to use the restaurants and cafes in the park, we wanted to then bring the art to those audiences that were already there. And unfortunately, 6 weekends of outdoor and indoor open house activities have now had to more or less be canceled because of this third wave. So what we've realized is that it's not a linear trajectory. It might be open, shut for the rest of the year until who knows when. So our open house, which was part of this condensed package, is now going to be spread out whenever we can. And it's made us have to be much more flexible with our outdoor activities, not to do a big stage, not to build big structures that require lengthy permitting process and gather big crowds, which right now we're restricted to 2 people in public. as of last week. So that's not going to work for a big outdoor festival. So instead, our outdoor pop-ups are going to be much more intimate, much smaller scale, and allow mobility. So rather than a big stage structure, maybe it's musicians with a mobile speaker, or maybe it's smaller dance things where people can watch at a more intimate distance, still distance, but a smaller group, and then that moves around to go to where the audiences are in pockets throughout the park. So I guess I'll stop there. I think that answers your question for now.
And the situation in South Korea, Jin, I noticed that South Korea started off very well, and then there was a second wave. What is the situation now in South Korea now, Jin?
Hello, I'm Jin. Glad to meet you all. I'm an independent producer working in festivals in outdoor spaces, and also working internationally with the Korean artists to introduce them to the international festivals. As I personally am working closely with the international colleagues, so all my works and all of the works with the artists that I work with is stopped in South Korea. And we can say that we are focusing on more localized festival or outdoor programs recently. Actually, we didn't have any lockdown in our society. However, all the public places has been shut down and public events were prohibited as well. At the very first time, there was no clear rules or regulations on a public event, but the government only notices that please try to avoid any possible chances of infection from your activity. It means that the public feels all things have no other reason but to cancel them. Therefore, all were in a hand of organizer of each event or the festivals. However, recently, about a month ago, our government clearly declared that if there is no more than 50 new infection cases in a day for 2 weeks, public events are allowed to do without any restrictions. But if the situation goes to more than 50 new infections a day, events with lesser than 50 audiences in an indoor space and lesser than 100 audiences in an outdoor space is only allowed. Recently we had a forum about the future of street arts festivals under this COVID-19, and we were slightly see that the audiences are still looking forward to seeing the arts in public spaces. However, there are still this consciousness that closer meeting with the stranger might spread out the virus again with a second wave. So the politicians are mostly on the side of the negative perspectives. So far, almost all the festival has been canceled, postponed, or changed its form through online platform, or spread out their programs into different venues, or prolong their festival dates until things were more clear. This is my answer.
Thank you, Jinin. The situation in Taiwan, though, is quite different, because I know that since mid-May, there were no new domestic cases in Taiwan, so good for you. Yuanqing, you're starting a brand new outdoor arts festival, so it'd be interesting to know what kind of changes in artistic programming you're doing and how you and your organizations are dealing with the COVID-19 situation.
Hello，我是元庆因为我怕我的英文不好，所以今天请到了我的朋友 Joy， 也是我们协会的成员来协助我翻译。
So he's Yuanqing, and I'm Joy. We are in the same organization. It is called Taiwan Street Arts and Culture Development Association. And today I will be the translator to translate his Mandarin into English.
我们这个协会其实就是大部分都是从一群表演者组织而成的。 我们希望可以透过这个协会，可以提供一个平台，可以跟政府对话，以及结合更多艺术家的能量。
So this association was established by a group of performers, and we hope to be a group, and we have the power to talk to government. Otherwise, we're just like individual performers, and we have no power.
然后很幸运的，我们在今年可以筹备这个花莲城市空间艺术节。
So luckily, this year we still have the chance to have this festival. It is called Hualien Performing Public Space Festival.
但的确我们也因为疫情的影响，原本会在6月底举办，但后来我们就改成到9月的时间。
But because of COVID-19, originally we will have this festival at the end of June, and now it will be
9月
it will be in the middle of September.
但的确刚刚听下来，台湾对于疫情的影响是相对比较乐观的，因为我们从很早之前就开始有很多的防疫措施，包括政府希望大家都可以戴口罩，然后并且也设定了一些系统，可以让我们每个人都可以购买到口罩，然后我们也限制了很多外国人或者是国外回来的人的一些隔离的措施，都做得非常的好，所以我们在6月的时候就已经几乎都是全面解禁，不管剧场的演出或者是任何室内演出，你只要能够戴口罩，保持好距离，你都可以来参加室内的活动。
So actually, we are lucky because of our policy from the government. They told us to wear masks. We must wear masks everywhere, and we have a system to promise that everyone can buy masks. So there's not the really pandemic in Taiwan, and the theater, the indoor activity was unbanned till June. That means we can go to theater, we can go to museum, we can go to any indoor places. We can go to any indoor places with safety. We can go to
safety
any
measures
indoor...
and mask and social distancing.
Yeah, we can. Sorry.
但是我们这个艺术节一开始举办的初衷就是希望所有的艺术都在户外，因为其实台湾相对的，比如说户外艺术或者是所谓的 street art 是谈及的那个次数是比较少的，所以我们想要透过这个艺术节，让更多台湾的民众看见艺术在街上或在户外的可能性。
So for this festival, actually, we're meant to do the arts in public space because we think the street arts is not so popular in Taiwan, and we want to promote street arts with the festival.
然后我们有透过政府的数据看到，其实每一年台湾人出国花的钱大概有差不多21亿美金左右，但是这些人现在没办法出国花钱了，所以现在政府反而很鼓励大家能够多出来旅游，多出来花钱在台湾的各个活动上。
And based on the data from the government, averagely, all of our people spend $2.1 billion for traveling per year. And now since we cannot go abroad, so the government just hope everyone to go out to explore Taiwan. So that's why we can still have this festival, and we're lucky to through this festival we're lucky to promote street arts.
所以这个艺术节现在也被当地的政府就是非常的关心，希望有更多的人因为这个艺术节来到花莲游玩。
And the government in Hualien, they are also happy with this festival. They because Hualien is in the east part of Taiwan, and actually not so many people go there. So the government hope they can by this chance they can have more people, they can have more tourists to Hualien.
所以欢迎来到花莲 ，Welcome to 花莲。
I wish I can go to Hualien. It's a beautiful place. As all of our panelists just said, people, you all have differences in countering the crisis that is brought by COVID-19. And there's data showing that people spend loads of money overseas normally. Now that people have to stay within the countries, the same situation is happening in the UK. The government is supportive of outdoor arts, and we're trying to reactivate the space. And there's something about outdoor arts and the recovery and bringing the community together that makes the healing of a traumatic event a lot easier, because there's a sense of community, there's a sense of we are supporting each other. Is it also the case in your respective territories? And what kind of opportunities would that bring? It will be great if you can share specific plans in your organizations, and if you know about wider territorial happenings that are helping with the recovery of people and also the economy in your territories. Yuanqing, would you like to continue?
我们在户外不管办任何活动，我们还是会希望可以知道今天来的人是谁，然后并且会帮他们量体温。
So we still have activities outdoor, and we still have the safety policy. So they still need to wear masks, and we will we'll monitor their temperature. So if it's not okay, then this person should not be here to contact with others.
然后有一些比较特定的活动，可能会有一些 QR code， 他必须要填写他的资料，我们应该会更清楚的知道，万一发生什么状况，可以联系到谁。
So even in some activities, they have something like QR code, a link, and you need to register, and you need to have your name, your information on it, so that when there's any problem, we can contact this person.
但
It
基本上
sounds
在
like
花
you're
莲，
very, it sounds like you're very well versed in the health and safety bit of how to present a COVID safe environment for a festival. It will be good if you can tell us more about the performing arts bit of your festival. So what kind of programming you're doing in view of the current situation whereby you don't have international artists and you have moved the date to September. Are there changes in terms of your artistic programming?
这想知道说我们
其实我们这个花莲城市空间艺术节没有因为疫情有做太多的改变，最大改变是时间的改变，因为6月底那时候非常紧张，但现在9月，目前以台湾的环境来看的话，大家是很想要参与这样子的活动的。
So for programming, actually for this Hualien festival, there is not much changed except the date.
因为本来在户外。
Because it was originally outdoor, an outdoor activity, and now it is still outdoor, and because it was in June, and people are nervous about the COVID-19, so that's why we postponed the festival. But there's not much change. 你可以说，就是有没有一些国际的受影响之类的，他们应该想。
的确，在国际邀演上，原本会邀请一个德国以及法国的团队，但因为疫情的关系，他们没有办法过来。但我们之后也许明年会再次邀请。
But for international program, surely it is affected. And originally there will be a performer from Germany and another performer from France. But now, because of the COVID-19, they cannot come to Taiwan. And now we are considering about inviting them again next year.
Jen, you also chatted a little about how the programmings in South Korea, because of COVID-19, has become localized. So in face of how outdoor arts can help your community recover, what sort of artistic programmings are you thinking about? What kind of opportunities there are? Are there any specific plans as to what your organizations are doing in terms of capitalizing on these opportunities and healing the community?
First of all, I would like to say that I think art is not a direct solution for healing the people, but we need to think about the role and responsibility of art as we are doing. I can say that aesthetics are changing its form and with the reopen strategies as well. For example, like a funny example, transparent masks are commonly used in a show, and choreography and its distance in a show has been modified as well. Some shows are taking advantage of them meeting audiences in a distanced socializing way, a more intimate encounter. Recently, there was one festival that tries to have a distancing in audience area, and they use the swimming tube for the chairs in outdoor venues so that they can keep the distance between the audiences, and they want to make people feel safe while seeing the shows. And I think it went well with the audience reception, and also gave a room to think about the art again after COVID-19 situation happened. Today, one of the artists mentioned that his recent experience as an Uber delivery rider. He is doing this job for the replacement of his earnings as he cannot perform anymore. He said he is seeing a new world with different perspectives while he is riding on his bike. He found his new interest in these spaces and tried to create the new show under this new era. And maybe I thought maybe archiving and remembering these times is another role of arts in these hard times. He also mentioned that he used to see the photo of him on a stage with a big smiles of audiences around him. And it reminds me of the relationship between us and audiences as well. How we communicate with the audiences is a key to go over the situation. I think we may think of the decreased number of the former version of the festival, like a large scale events, but maybe imagine new approaches of street arts able to see those who were already dismissed or ignored to be included in a public events again. And one of my festival, Hwacheon Festival, is trying to include local artists and local citizens more into this year's program. Try to do an interview with them to archiving their memories from COVID-19, and try to make an exhibition in outdoor spaces for making people to be together again in a public spaces. Yeah, those are what we are trying to approach these days.
And Alison, I know that there are protests and COVID-19, and West Kowloon has been doing a lot of rescheduling and rethinking about programming. Can you share a bit of your experience as well?
Absolutely. 3 examples. One, to your point about healing, especially in outdoor spaces. Pre-COVID, obviously in Hong Kong, we had a year now and counting, but about 8 months before COVID of ongoing protests that were really, creating a lot of strife with families and communities and disruption in the city. And in November of last year, 2019, we had our inaugural Jazz Fest, which was with Free Space, our Center for Contemporary Performance, and outdoors in our art park. And over 2 days, with very minimal advertising, because of the general feeling in the city, it wasn't a good time to advertise loudly. We had almost 14,000 people come over 2 days. And to us, it was proof that they wanted that sense of community, of healing, of coming together for collective joy, and to just experience something that was calm and uplifting. And that was in November, when things were getting really quite tense. So that to us was a real example of the need for things like that. Now with COVID, it's harder. We thought we were going in that direction with the open house activities, but then with this third wave, we've had to dial it back. But we've gotten really creative and two examples. One is more precautionary measures. With our Shichu Center, our Chinese opera house, we have different ensembles. Some do ensemble free music concerts in the atrium, which is a big outdoor atrium space in the building, and then also in our tea house theater. In the atrium, when we've done free shows for the public, we've not had any wind instruments as an extra precaution, not to have people blowing instruments into the audience. And we've had distance from the musicians in the center of the Shichu Center atrium and the audience. Up in our tea house theater, we do Cantonese opera performances. We need wind instruments, so we've separated them on either side of the stage. The Cantonese opera ensemble is on one side, but then the wind instruments, there are 2 or 3 musicians on the other, and we have those clear barriers in front of the musicians when they're playing, between the audience, as kind of precaution, lest they blow their instrument and blow it onto the audience. So that's a more practical side of things. On a creative side, this September, we were supposed to have Umeda from Japan come and perform in a dance festival that we're doing, but there are travel restrictions and of course the quarantine. So originally we thought he was going to come with some dancers and they were going to perform and go home, the usual. Instead, when we knew this quarantine probably isn't going to go away, we've rethought that production. And he's also a visual artist, a video artist. So we're transforming our black box theater into an installation, immersive installation of his film work. And then he's going to perform his 15-minute solo in Tokyo, and we'll live stream it into the theater and then do a Q&A. So the whole experience is still going to be his 15-minute solo performance, but actually the audience will get a bit more from this artist because they'll get his installation work, they'll get more of a conversation with our dance curator, Karen Zheng, here in Hong Kong, having a chat with him via the live stream after his solo. So it's kind of a 3-part that we've now curated for this instance. Rather than just cancel the international artist, we're talking to the artists to see which ones we can adapt or change or create a new experience that allows them to perform remotely, digitally, and other ways.
Good that you mentioned digital, because post-COVID-19, it seems like this is a trend that's happening, or it has accelerated the trend that is happening already. The British Council China is actually hosting a digital festival in October. The Department of International Trade in the UK is doing virtual delegation. So instead of physical people flying to different countries, everything is happening on a digital platform. What do you think does that mean to international collaboration in 2021 and beyond? Do you think that everything will go digital, or do you have other ideas up your sleeves as to how your organization or your territory will work with international artists? Alison, why don't I continue with you? In particular, I'm interested in knowing from 2021 to 2025, because a lot of artists and organizations here in the UK and around the world have to apply for different fundings, and the funding cycle actually do run for around 2 to 3 years. So it would actually be interesting to know what your thoughts are in 2021 and beyond in terms of international collaboration.
Well, nothing replaces in-person experience, and the digital experience has to be, in our mind, and we're having, like everybody, lots of conversations about digital and its role and what's our digital strategy. And our conclusion is digital has to augment, not replace. It's and, not or. It has to be something that we would want to do anyways, even if we were open normally, keeping in mind that normal is shifting. So for international collaborations, everybody's hopeful and confident that we will get to a place that we can travel again, because that really is vital to, frankly, society and humanity. We need the live experience. In the interim, this is an amazing opportunity to just try new things, because nobody has the script for what is going on. So one thing we're trialing right now is digital residencies. What does that look like? We have a partnership with Hualien in Taiwan, with an art center in Japan, France, and Italy, and then Hong Kong is West Kowloon. And we have dance artists in each of these cities that will do a week in each city, but actually everything's online. So how do you do a dance residency, which is very physical, very much about the body, not about talking like we're doing here, but do something digital? So maybe it will be a complete failure, but this is the time to try those things. And perhaps we'll discover something that could be usable even when we can travel again, to save those resources financially, to save the environmental impact. But I don't think it's going to replace the travel. We need that as well.
Yuanqing, I know that in Taiwan, the situation is a bit better, and there are actually still international collaboration happening. How would it look like for you in 2021 and beyond in terms of working with international partners? Are you still inviting people over? Are you still presenting overseas works? How would it look like for you?
我觉得台湾的艺术家们还是渴望可以跟国际交流，因为台湾的人很希望让更多人看见我们在做的事情。
Because we still want to promote street arts in Taiwan and let Taiwanese people to see the street arts from around the world. So we still want to invite people to Taiwan.
但现在的确就遇到一个比较严重的问题，就是我们出不去，大家也进不来。但是现在其实台湾有一些状况是，大家会把那种原本要邀请国外的艺术家来到台湾，变成用线上方式来，比如说上工作坊啦，或者是有一些演出，的确就直接把表演者投影在就是剧场里面，让大家看到他其实也是在现场表演，只是透过视讯的方式去参与这个制作。
So even the situation in Taiwan is, we can say, is better, but the traveling is still prohibited. So there are a lot of people we were invited. Now they were invited, and now they could not come to Taiwan. And the way how to conquer it is to use, just like what Allison did. What Allison said, we use like a projection in a theater to do it, or we have workshop online.
但是值得庆幸的是，台湾并没有禁止任何人来到台湾，只要你有相对的工作的签证，以及你愿意先在台湾隔离14天，你就可以参与台湾的各项活动。所以也许明年可以欢迎大家来到台湾，一起做一些国际交流。
And so even the traveling, the normal traveling is banned, but the restriction is not for the professional workers. So if you are the professional artist and you have to work here, you can still come in. So we're looking forward to have all of you to Taiwan next year.
And lastly, with Jen,
okay.
you are an artist yourself, you produce, you also curate different festivals. I know recently you were in Asia Topa with your work When It Rains with 2 Australian artists. International collaboration has long been a part of your practice. In this past year, how has it been impacted and what are you looking forward to in 2021 and beyond?
I can say that my country, South Korea, is like an island. As our border is blocked, we are disconnected with North Korea. We cannot go over there, which means that whenever we want to go somewhere else, we need to fly if we want to cross the border. I suddenly feel like reunification is needed more than ever. I mean, the reunification of 2 Koreas, so that I can take a Siberian Express train to visit my friends in different areas. However, in regards of international collaboration, we started to think about the reason why we need a collaboration. Do we really need to fly over there? We are in a process of considering the reason of it and the tools and the method of international collaboration these days. For example, Seoul Street Arts Festival, which is one of the biggest outdoor art events in South Korea, is changing its form with different approaches, is including the decreased number of international shows, not like usual. However, they still have this few shows in the name of international programs without any physical meeting, but still connecting with the, I can say, virtual co-production, so that they are still doing a conversation with a Zoom and try to direct the different part of the show in their own home, I can say. Then also include the aesthetics of different artistic partners into a production so that they can present it together in the name of international collaboration project as well. Also, Seoul Street Art Creation Center, which is a creation space and self-supporting organization for the street arts in Korea. They had a plan to invite Complex Caparnon from France, the visual artist group from France, for the co-production with Korean artists in this October. However, they are not able to come as to the 14 days of quarantine policies. So they come up with this idea of teletrabike, online work together, and try to share their workshop outputs into a live exchange of sceneries in a different video projection in a different spaces, so that they can try to find the next step of their collaboration, which is a second phase of collaboration in the next year. So probably then they can try to find other way to meet each other, maybe in an online way or the physical meetings. So I feel like we are not losing our opportunities, but we are in the middle of diversifying our way of meeting each other. New trials such as quarantine residency can be another option as well, because the artist who is coming to Korea at this moment should stay in a one place for 14 days, which can be also turned into a type of residency in a quarantine situation. So I think still we are connected with others, maybe in a smarter way than ever.
I want to continue with Jin on that because as an artist, you're an artist and producer, you're producing work for different organizations locally and internationally. And as a curator, you were also curating programs internationally to Korea. It's a very practical question about funding and payment to artists. So what's the situation like in South Korea? Because what's happening in the UK is that COVID-19 has opened up the Pandora's box of between funding and going fully commercial with a lot of theatres and organizations. We also saw the different, the sort of dangers of the gig economy, whereby a lot of artists are on freelance contracts and bases. At the beginning of the lockdown, the Arts Council England very quickly said, urged organizations who are receiving funding from Arts Council to continue to give out the funds to artists. What is the situation like in South Korea?
It's a very important question, but hard to answer, because we were having a very hard time because all things were canceled. And normally our force majeure condition in a country says that epidemic is a force majeure, and the which means that normally the organizer is not taking any responsibility for paying the artists in this condition. So artists were trying to claim their voices against this clause and the relationship between the festival or the venue and their shows, and try to make suggest a new new standard of relationship between the organizer and artists as well. However, it's not from our government. We cannot force anybody to pay artists or compensate artists at this moment. But there are, but there are still a good partner who is trying to overcome the situation together, because we cannot make artists to take all those difficulties only with their bodies, but we need to take the responsibility together. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, it's a good point, and it's a hard to answer at the moment.
And Ellison, the situation in Hong Kong?
Yeah, I mean, as a major institution, West Kowloon, we've been having these conversations because when the cancellations started, all of our income disappeared, ticket sales, venue hire. So, and we don't get government funding for operations. So obviously as an institution, we're suffering, but we realize we're also a big fish in a city with a lot of freelancers. So there's a kind of a moral responsibility not to just say force majeure, bye-bye. So a lot of our conversations were, okay, we need to know what is the legal basis, so force majeure, what is our moral or goodwill basis to ensure we're not just turning our backs on our partners and our artists and our technicians and all of the freelancers. It's not just the artists, but a lot of these casual staff that work job to job or hourly, all of those things. And then third level would be if we had all the money in the world, we could just pay everything as we go. So a lot of things we had to look at as a case-by-case basis, but as much as possible, we prioritized paying freelancers, paying independent artists as much as we could, or trying to front load if we were rescheduling the work, not canceling, just rescheduling so we could pay them at a later date, or trying to see if we could advance some payments because now cash flow for everybody is an issue. So trying to look at as many scenarios as we could. One incredible thing that the CEO initiated and the top executives all agreed to take a pay cut for the entire year and donate that portion of their salary to an artist relief fund. And then the board chair topped it up with a personal donation as well. And that funding, there were more than almost 400 applications. And in the end, we were able to fund, I think, around 15 or so artists to do projects that are made for this time. So a lot of them involve digital, but the projects also prioritize working with as many people as possible. So if it's one person in a room doing a monologue, probably not going to get funded. But if they're employing other artists through the grant to do a project, then that was one of the ones we chose. So I think that announcement goes out this week, actually. And then the other thing that we did was, okay, our venues were closed, but how could we use the studios or the other spaces to create projects that maybe didn't have a live audience, but either would be research and development for the future. So we could, if we're cash poor, but we're real estate rich, so we can offer space. And we're having that conversation now with this third wave of closures. How can we not just leave the buildings empty? If the government says you have to close the building, then we have no choice. But if they say just don't do shows, we can still have internal events, work events that allow artists to at least have space to keep working. So we're trying to be creative and flexible to just provide whatever resources we can. And I guess, sorry, to add something, and I know we're not alone in that. Speaking in the broader Hong Kong community, Daigun is an incredible art space right in central in Hong Kong. I know that they've been really working hard to pay the artists that they've had to cancel as much as possible and to reschedule and find other ways to support those artists. They've been trying to look at other creative ways to use their spaces as well. So that's another example. And then there are others too, but one in particular I know who is also not government funded necessarily, so they're not recipients for some of Hong Kong's government support, but they're still trying to be creative in ways to continue supporting artists.
And Yanqing, I know that your development agency is sort of a go-between to talk to government. Is there any conversations happening there in terms of supporting artists in this situation?
其实台湾的情况相对其他国家是蛮特别的，因为我们在疫情开始以及到现在，其实中间的确会有很多不管是剧场的表演或者艺术节被取消，但是现在基本上是照常进行的虽然就是在室内活动有很多活动被取消，可是其实在户外的活动都是还可以正常表演的，所以不至于到所有的艺术家都没有收入，但的确影响到了室内的那些剧场的艺术家，他们的确有半年的时间是没有任何收入的。然后台湾的政府有编列大概2000万美金的一个预算来支持这些艺术家，让他们可以度过这个难关。
Okay. So so now actually we're not so affected so much because although the indoor activities are canceled a lot, the outdoor activities are normally held. So there are still a lot of street performers and like outdoor theaters. And for these activities, they still have there are still a lot of audience to watch them. And the government actually have about $20 million for the artists to pass this emergency situation. 然后我觉得可以说我们有什么我们的那个就是对。我们自己的那个
对，然后我们协会其实有得到一个赞助商的支持，所以有部分的表演者是可以透过我们协会的申请得到一些补助，然后可以用于不管是经济上的困难，或者是你想要在进修你的表演，都可以使用这个基金。
So actually, for our association, we got funding from some companies. And for these financial fundings, we pass them to the artists. So whatever, if you are in some emergency, you need money, or you want to improve yourself, you want to produce a new work, you can apply for this funding from our association.
虽然这些补助听起来好像蛮好的，可是的确我身边有一些艺术家，他们的确差一点渡不过这个难关。 但因为6月开始室内活动解禁，开始剧场的活动越来越多，其实台湾的下半年是相对非常的忙的。现在看下来，1个礼拜至少会有6到8个演出在剧场里面，而在同一个城市。
And actually, the funding really helps because some of our friends in the past month they have little money and they barely live their life. So the funding actually helped them to pass this month. And from now on, actually Taiwan have there will be a lot of artistic activities in Taiwan, especially for the coming half year. For now, there will be about 6 to 8 shows per week in theater in Taiwan now.
但是我也看到一个担忧的部分，因为虽然有这么多的艺术活动，可是其实愿意买票进剧场的观众其实并没有增加，反而减少。我觉得是因为疫情的期间，大家对于娱乐的选择开始有不一样的改变，可能有些人会喜欢在线上看直播，或是用其他的方式。所以我觉得大家也可以去思考一下，这个疫情继续影响人类。那势必会影响大家对于娱乐的选择。那我们也许未来可以做一些相对应的一些措施，去面对未来的这个局势。
But we're also worried about one thing because even the activities are normally running, but the audience are not really they're not really pay more to watch shows indoors, because now under the effect of COVID-19, people have more they have more choices to have fun. They for example, they can play video games, they can watch Netflix online every day. So the more choices there are, actually the artistic activities may be affected under this situation. So we can also think in the future, how can we do to change the traditional artistic form and to let more people want to go indoor to watch show, to pay for the artistic events.
I want to add on what I said before. Those difficulties in our relationship between artists and the organizer is giving us the moment to think about our previous hegemonies between us, which is a good thing for us, I guess. And also, we were able to think about the welfare of the artists from the several different approaches from the government. First one is just a basic income for every citizen. We were able to get it from the government when the COVID-19 has struck us. And the second welfare policy that we got as an artist is basic income for an artist. It depends on the different regions and the cities. Some they have, some they're not doing it. But still, there are chances are more that we are trying to claim the importance of artists in our society. And third approach was supporting the research on this times, COVID-19 era, so that we can try to think of post-COVID-19, so that we can develop our society with the arts and also society of arts as well. The last approach to support the arts in our country is supporting the production itself, so that they can still keep their original production to be on the stage after this pandemic situation has gone.
Great to hear that a lot of different governments and organizations are very actively supporting artists in this situation. I've just been receiving questions from the delegates. One of the questions is about online residencies. So say, for example, Ellison and Jin, you both talked a little bit about how a lot of your interactions have moved online. How do these online residencies work? Can you give us some specific details as to, do they collaborate? How do they chat with local artists? And then as a follow-up question to that is, what is the economy behind it? That follows through with our conversation just now about funding and how freelance artists are also searching for a way of keeping their economic, financial sustainability. So how do you support this, and how is their work in an online residency measured? I'll start with Ellison, and then Jen, you can also share.
Sure. The short answer is we don't know yet what it looks like. It's happening in September is the first one. And as I mentioned, it's 5 cities. So a city in France, a city in Japan, a city in Italy, Hualien and West Kowloon. And the economics of it are each host is in charge of that week. So we'll do our week in November. We will set up some kind of internet capacity in our studio and free space. We'll support it with the technical equipment, with the access to the room. And before that, we're in discussion now with the 5 partners to figure out, what does it look like? Is it 5 dancers across 5 time zones or 3 time zones, improvising on the internet? Is it, do we have some dramaturgs and other experts that might, in the different cities, that perhaps will structure, I don't want to say activities, but kind of tasks or challenges that everybody has to do. And so then maybe it's about coming back and sharing on the Zoom, and then everybody goes off and does things in their own cities, and then comes back and there's an exchange of that. We don't know yet. This is a pure experiment, and it might fail, and it might help us learn about other ways of cross-pollinating with artists in other cities. And we are paying our artists for this. So we have in the budget an artist stipend for their time. And again, it's easy. Everybody's just in charge of the artist in their city. There's there's an application for that residency, and the 5 hosts collectively help choose the 5 participants.
Well, I'm not sure whether my answer is a correct one, but I can say 2 different examples. One is a quarantine type of residency. Yeah, it sounds not really good, but it was interesting. One of the public theater in Seoul called Samillo Theater, they had this project in last May, which called Clean Room, keeping a clean room for an artist, staying there 1 week without any encounter with others, and try to archive her thoughts and ideas. How has it changed, and how she feels, how he feels, and what he would like to communicate after being in an isolated position. And it was broadcasted in the YouTube. Like 4 or 5 different artists were in this program, and it was interesting for us because, not like others in European countries, we didn't experience any lockdown regulation. So it was slightly approaching to the situation in a global perspective, but also it was reflecting our situation, like as a global citizens, our situation with the range of artists. And yeah, I just thought of this project, and their outcome was very interesting. Yeah, And the other example that I'd like to say is one of the projects that I recently jumped in and doing it is called In Own Space between Korean and Japan Thailand artists. We are doing online exchanges every 2 days. So the artists are continuing with the previous video production so that we can take in turn of creations by sharing ideas and taking the common topics that artists, that the other artists, the previous artists were dealing in his work in video form. So that in this way, we'd like to know different artists with different perspectives. And I would like to say this was a meaningful and able to do it because we were trying to meet each other and know each other, which was the first step of the collaboration. So to know each other and sharing ideas in a video form in tons was quite interesting, and output was also interesting as well. So I think, as Alice mentioned, I don't have any clear solution for valid for everybody, but for me in this position, there are still many different tools that I can utilize for ourselves.
I wanted to jump in with another idea. I like what you said about utilizing different tools. Another residency that now has to go digital is we had funding to include a collaboration with Taiwan and Hong Kong musicians and composers as part of our Jazz Fest this November. And we were going to bring over a number of Taiwan musicians to spend a week or two in residence here to work with local Hong Kong musicians, compose new works, and then perform, do a kind of work in progress showcase during the Jazz Fest in November. Now with the travel situation, that's unlikely. So we're exploring, as Jin said, what are the tools at our disposal to still do that residency. And it's a little bit easier perhaps with music than say with dance, although it's not ideal to share that work and then still do a performance with people in two different places. And so maybe it won't necessarily be live, maybe we'll have to record it, we'll see, but that's something that we'll probably still go ahead and do this fall as well with Taiwan and Hong Kong musicians.
我刚刚一直在思考说，就是当然线上直播或是线上的演出是一种方式，但是我在想是怎么让观众愿意花钱在这个娱乐上。
So we are thinking about not just how to live stream our performance, but also we're thinking about how to let the audience pay for the performance.
我们这边有个案例可以跟大家分享，就是最近有一个算是经纪公司来跟我们协会合作，然后他们以前都是希望名人可以拍影片，或是那些明星可以拍影片给他的粉丝，但是观众可以购买这个影片，然后去分享给他想要分享的朋友。然后他现在邀请我们的艺术家来做这件事情，所以观众是可以订阅这些艺术家，可以希望这艺术家可以透过一些表演，然后可以给予他的朋友一些祝福啊，或者一些特别的演出啊。所以也许这是一个方法，大家可以想看看。
So we have an example here. A company just collaborated with our association, and in the past time, they invited celebrities to have videos, to film a video, and just to say something to people, and because they are celebrities, and there are a lot of people buying their video to share with their friends. For example, they want someone to talk to their friends, say, hey, happy birthday, something like that. And this can be a business model. And now this company just invite our association to join this program. So we also provide some artists these chances to film the video, to upload their video on the platform. And if the people like the video, they can pay for it. They can just require something from the artist. For example, they want you to do a show, to send to his or her friend. Then he can pay a little, and you just do your show online and film it, upload it, and you have your money. So maybe we can also think about it, this kind of business model.
And it's quite interesting how, again, with crisis comes opportunity. This opens up a lot of diversification in terms of how artists create work and how producers produce work and how curators program different works. There's another discussion happening on the YouTube about the different scales of performances. As the panelists have been saying, with COVID-19, it seems like at least within the next few months, the shows would be of a smaller scale, relatively flexible. There will be increase in mobility. What would it look like for works of larger scales? That's question number one. And question number two is, as we move on towards a more digital offer alongside, hopefully, live performances, how do we ensure that people with access needs would be able to continue to join us and engage with a more diverse audience? Ellison, I know that West Kowloon has an accessibility office, and with the art park, you offer different scales of performances. What are your thoughts about that?
I think actually this webinar with the captions is a good example of how digital is trying to be accessible for people with different abilities and different needs in the digital realm. Certainly with our art park physical accessibility, we had perhaps a way to get around some of the regulations. When it was 50 people who could gather as opposed to 2 people, we thought, well, we can apply for a license within this restricted area and only 50 people are allowed in there, but then everybody else can just be around the park and listen anyways. And so the stage would be inside that restricted area where only the 50 people would be allowed, but then the rest of the park, nothing's going to block them from standing and listening. So it's a bit of a 上有政策,下有对策, like there are the rules and then their way around the rules. But now with 2 people, that's impossible. So I think it is a bit of having to figure out when we can have larger groups. I think the digital aspect, this doesn't quite answer your question, but it's an interesting, innovative project that we've done while groups couldn't gather, is we partnered with Edward Lamb Dance Theater to do a project called On Empty Theater. And we invited 30 Hong Kong performers, actors, mostly of stage, but stage, screen, television, to be physically confronted with our empty theater at Free Space. So they were brought into a dark room. Often many of these 30 performers, individually, just one person, stood on the stage and we turned the lights on to the big empty theater, and they just improvised their emotional reaction to being confronted with this empty theater with no audience. And we created 30 individual little portraits of these artists, nothing more than like 4 minutes, 5 minutes. And it's both a global showcase because it's with surtitles in Chinese and English online. So all of our artists who can't travel now are all over the world thanks to this project. And the world can see some of Hong Kong's really incredible theater artists. And it's a way to, in a very creative way, address this phenomenon that's frankly global. We're all, as artists, being confronted with an empty theater. And so what does that mean? What does it bring up? And how does it revalidate the need for our art forms. So maybe I can share that link. It's on YouTube in the YouTube chat, but I encourage everybody to watch the On Empty Theater project, because you can just dip in and dip out, 3 minutes of this artist, 4 minutes of that artist, and it's this incredible encyclopedia of Hong Kong's theater performers.
Yuanqing, you also have something to add to this.
目前看来，下半年台湾会举办艺术节。可是我们当然明年也会去疫情的影响，我们有去思考说，怎么让这个艺术节更有在地化。我们前一阵子才带了一群都市的艺术家到了原住民的部落非市区，跟那群非市区的艺术家交流，有更多的台湾的文化的一些交流。我觉得这是未来我们在艺术节上面会想要做更多的。
So actually in Taiwan in the coming half year, the scale of festivals is not changed much because the COVID-19 is not really spreading out severely. But we are still thinking about after this year, after next year, for the coming years, how do we have this arts festival? Do we still have the same scale? So we are actually thinking about the localized art festival. So actually about a month ago, we have the project that we combine artists from urban from the urban place to collaborate with the country-based artists, and actually they are Aboriginals. So they have their culture. So through this cooperation, we found we can do a lot of things, and because they didn't know, and there are also a lot of things we didn't know. So through this collaboration, we actually at the end of the day, at the end of the project, actually we have a show combine all the artists. Combine all the professional of artists to give a public show to people, and this is a brand new we can say a brand new form. So in the coming years, we will think about how to do more art festival like this to combine local people, to combine urban artists and country artists to create a new thing.
And one last question. Oh, sorry, Jen.
I want to mention about locality in this perspective. The two different sides of locality. It is great that we can take care of our neighborhoods in this COVID-19 situation, which were commonly forgotten or neglected. However, on the other side of this locality, there is this hatred about the stranger. So sometimes I got the questions like, oh, hey, are you coming from Seoul to this city in the south? Oh, I heard that there are many COVID-19 cases in Seoul. Are you okay? These kind of questions are here, like everywhere. I think what we need to do after this situation is to overcome this hatred between people, so that we can talk about equality, diversity, and inclusion with our own arts. And the festival should take care of it in their own way, to welcoming people again to their city, their place, to their citizens. And many of the festivals in our country is trying to organize the different workshops and include these forgotten values, so that they can look forward the future in in their programming way and also in their organizing approaches as well.
It's very interesting because it's quite similar situation for me in Manchester, where I feel like Manchester is a very friendly city, but then with COVID-19, with the social distancing issue happening, there's a strange fear of people. And would VR, virtual reality, or AR, augmented reality, be one of the things that can help us reintegrate with what it means to be intimate with someone? Is there any development within East Asia, say for example with Ellison, Umeda's work? How does that work? Can you tell us a little bit more about it? That will be the last question from the audience, and then we'll do a quick wrap up and then pass back to Hannah after the quick wrap up. So Ellison?
Well, quickly about Hiroki Umeda's project, that is still, even though he will be physically in Japan, the installation where he is still very much a live experience. So we're hoping that we'll be able to bring audiences into the theater. Some of the works that will be on display is Intentional Particles, something he did in 2015, Holistic Strata installation from 2011, Kinesis 1, Screenfield. So a number of earlier works are what we'll showcase, but then his that combination with his live solo in real time is a new creation and a new experience, but we want people there. We are doing VR. We're working with Hong Kong Dance. They'll be in residence for a week and they've created a VR experience. But again, we would do that even not in COVID times. And I think I'm a Luddite. I'm very pro bodies together in a same space. I think this has to happen. So I think our open house activity was actually our effort to restore customer confidence. We were going to do a number of film installations to have people come in and go out as they felt safe. They wouldn't have to sit for 2 hours, and to do other lighter touch, smaller groups, and then build up. But again, we're not in that linear trajectory to full reopening. So we're trying to adapt as we go. I think VR and AR, again, like anything digital, is in addition to, not in exchange of.
And coming to this, it's one last question is, under the situation, can each one of you give us one brief suggestion? It would be great if it's a one-word answer, a one-sentence answer, as to how you think the outdoor art as a sector can remain connected across geography, culture, and bureaucratic borders, despite the current uncertain landscape. We'll start with Ellison, and then Yuanqing, and then Din.
Well, this whole experience with COVID has simply proven the absolute need and value for what we do, indoors and outdoors. What we do is we bring people together for shared experience. So the one sentence, given all that, I think COVID has absolutely proven the need and value for the arts. My word is keep going. Don't give up, keep going.
我觉得就是我觉得户外艺术相对于在剧场里面的艺术是幸运一点，因为在户外艺术比较容易有流动的空气，所以相对在发展上会是比较容易一些的。它也许会像台湾，就是它接受度会比较的大。然后因为之前大家都戴着口罩的关系，其实会发现人跟人之间的距离越来越远，可是可以透过就是户外艺术或街头艺术的形式，去重新拉回人跟人之间的距离。所以就是大家一起加油，台湾加油，然后香港加油，然后韩国加油，全世界加油。
So in Taiwan, we're lucky to still have outdoor activities, and actually in outdoor activity, the air is open. So compared to the indoor events, the possibility to be infected is pretty low. And we are still working on the development of street arts. But because of the COVID-19, everyone need to wear masks in Taiwan. So the distance between people are now like far away. Even you just have one mask on your face, it's hard to see the smile in from the audience. So actually, we have distance. So now we are still what we want to do is to promote street arts, to develop more street arts. For example, for this Hualien Public Space Festival, we want to bring people to outdoor, and hope people can still have connection during this activity. And yeah, let's work together. Yeah, cheer up for Hong Kong, for Korea, for UK, for Taiwan. Yeah.
Well, what I like the art in public spaces the most is that there was no normality. Many people say the new normal these days, but I think we can go beyond this, as we already have been doing. And I feel like, so my last sentence is, we have enough reasons to meet again, as our streets, our public spaces would do.
And on that very positive note, thank you very much, our panelists, Alison, Yanqing, and Joey, and Jin. This panel discussion really reminded us not only of the beauty of arts, but also the responsibilities of artists, organizations, and government in terms of providing welfare, not only to artists, but also in terms of the wider community. We also need to keep in mind to do with accessibility, welfare, and environmental conditions. And now I can hear Hannah coming back in the background. Hannah will give us a understanding of the schedules of this afternoon. So thank you very much, panelists, and back to you, Hannah.
Thank you, Michelle. This has been such an interesting conversation, but I'm afraid that that's all we have time for. To close, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Michelle and our wonderful speakers for the interesting discussion, which I'm sure has provided our audience with lots of inspiration to continue building connections and maintaining collaborations in Asia. If anyone would like any further information about Xtrax's international work in Asia, please do contact me following this session. Thank you also to everyone who's attended the session. We'll be sharing this online after today, so you can watch it again and share it with your colleagues. I'd also like to remind you that we're streaming content all day today on this same YouTube link. So please stay connected to enjoy fantastic video content streams as part of the Surf at Home Festival programme, introduced by Jeremy Shine, the Artistic Director. This includes some archive and pre-recorded content of shows and highlights from both this year and previous year's programmes. The videos will stream from now until 2:30 British Summer Time. At 2:30 if you're in the UK, or 3:30 in Central European Time, we will commence our second webinar addressing the future of international touring for UK and European companies in the context of Brexit. Thank you very much, everybody, and goodbye.